Just a couple of guys, a couple of microphones, and a heck of a lot of know. It's Football on the Know with Jim and Joe.
What they say, it's not the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmies and the Joes.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Football on the Know. I am Jim McPhee. Alongside of me is Mr. Joe DeCapita.
Me?
Ooh, that's you.
What's going on, Noodles? Welcome back for another edition of Football on the Know show, and a very special, Football on the Know, because it is once again one of our favorite times of the year. That's right, it's draft time, and we're gonna dive into a few of the positions. We're gonna give you guys our top 10 in offensive linemen, D linemen, and linebackers. So something that we push back a little further than most. I know a lot of people are out there doing tons of mock drafts, tons of evaluations, and always changing their top 10 or their overall draft board and everything. But we like to kind of gather a little bit more information as much as we can, and then try to give you guys the best option for all your teams.
Yeah, we don't need to do 50 of them, right, Joe? And then say, at least one of mine might have been right at one point in this, offseason.
But that's kind of where it gets to is like, I'm starting to notice now that there's some guys that I look at for some information and their viewpoints on different players, and I'm seeing them kind of like regurgitate over and over and over now, like, we're coming out with another top 10 for wide receivers in about 3 weeks. And it's like, yeah, it shouldn't change that much, though. You know what I mean? So, we got, right here. We got Sherry Krutzinger. That's my Aunt Sherry, to be exact.
Aunt Sherry
she goes, how was your cheesecake? Loved it.
Love cheesecake, man.
Thanks
Cheesecake.
It's good
for,
stuff,
For
right?
all the haters of cheesecake, which I don't get. I don't know what's wrong with you people. It is amazing stuff. If it is terrible for you, then it's amazing. And cheesecake is terrible for you, but it's amazing.
It's so good.
It's so good.
It's so good.
All different flavors,
Especially-
too. Whatever flavor, man. I had a turtle cheesecake the other day. It was amazing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, especially when it's homemade.
Oh,
Thank you,
yeah.
Aunt Sherry. Thank you. But that's the thing is, like, now you're starting to see everybody kind of recalculate as information comes in, or as much as you can get, right? Because we're not, just like anybody else out there that's evaluating talent, we're the outsiders of the NFL. We only can look at film. We can only kind of maybe hear some information here and there and try to put it together and try to come up with some sort of resemblance of what the NFL teams are doing.
Absolutely. So we'll get that in just a bit. But again, the latest news that has had its grip on the NFL right now is the fact that Stefon Diggs now is officially traded to the Houston Texans here. They'll receive a second-round pick. The Bills will get a second-round pick for 2025 made by you. And not only do the Texans get Stefon Diggs, we also get this year's sixth and next year's fifth.
Which is
have something to do with
confusing.
that. Yeah, it's like they just tacked it on the end. They're like, all right.
What do we
do it now?
What else
We'll
do we
give you
need to
this.
do? What do we need to do to make this
Yes.
happen?
Yes.
So it's like, and that's kind of what the trade looked like. It was like, it came out of nowhere for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it was like, all of a sudden, boom, Diggs is traded. And we're like, wait, what's going on right now? The Bills have no wide receivers.
Yeah, nobody now.
It's like Gabe Davis moved on in free agency. Now Diggs was rumored to possibly be traded. And now that that's happened, and the other funny part of this whole scenario,
It's not
is that-
funny to Bills fans.
No. But for a lot of people looking at the situation for what it is Josh Allen, of all people, the quarterback, the leader of this team, wasn't even notified until after this was all agreed upon. So you're telling me that Josh Allen, one of his closest friends, one of the guys that, like, obviously is his favorite target for a reason. Now, like, when you find out this news, that if you're Josh Allen, you're like, you don't know what to say. You're like, okay, now what are we doing? And that's the problem. Like, Bills Mafia has got to be absolutely irate right now, not knowing, okay, what's the direction now? Like, what are we doing right now?
Are y'all fucking serious right
it
now?
almost seems as if the organization is now, they're not necessarily rebuilding per se, because we all hear about this, like the window, right? The window for Buffalo, is it closing? Is it closing? But this might give a lot of people that think the window's closing, give them a little bit more ammo on that. And for Bills fans, it's like, all right, well, Gabe Davis, we let him walk in free agency. Diggs, now we've traded and he's moving on. What are we doing? And it's quite simply, everybody knows what the Bills are going to be doing in the draft now. Because obviously they are going to go for a top-end wide receiver. I don't think they're going to stay where they are in the first round in the bottom. They're going to look to trade up. And they're going to, whatever receiver they decide on, like that's our guy, they're going to make a big effort in trading up to get their guy to replace Diggs for the future, having a younger weapon and a guy who's cheaper too on top of it all.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot to this trade, even the fact that, afterwards Adam Schefter comes out and the fact that when Minnesota pulled out that trade with Houston before, that Houston was the one that introduced it and that they came to the table with it, and they really wanted to get that second round pick here, that extra pick there to pull off this trade to make this happen. And a lot of people were like, well, Minnesota, now they're doing something to move up and here and and do that, which they still can do something like that. But now,
of course,
Houston, they were poising themselves to make a move and do things like that and pull off this trade. So now that the Bills can do this now. So it's funny how as we're getting closer to the date of the draft, how some of these different storylines are going to come out and what teams' real intentions are, because there's a lot of smoke being blown right now out there in the NFL,
and that's the big deal about in the NFL right now is that there, like you mentioned, there's a lot of rumors, there's some deception going on, there's some leaks that are being put out there for good or for bad for each team. So you got to try to do your best and try to compartmentalize all that information and just try to give your best opinion on really what is each team doing. And that, I think, is the most confusing part, especially for this year's draft. It is amazing on how difficult it is going to be to decipher which team is going to make a move, which team is going to go a certain direction, because I really strongly feel that this year's draft is the most perplexing draft of them all, because every single team with every single pick can go so many different ways. They could trade down. They could stay where they are and take a player of a position that we never anticipated them taking. And it's not just the top 10 picks. It goes through all the way through the draft. So already as confusing as the draft is for a lot of us, it got a little bit more serious.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, the big thing here now is what are the Bills going to be able to do? They've lost a lot in free agency too. So, not only, with the Diggs now trade, you have the losses on the defensive side of the ball and Josh Allen there. Yes. Now his go-to guy, at least until they do draft that wide receiver, which when that happens,
so on paper
they are going to, he's going to be, visiting, hey, come over to my house. We got to start doing some work, put some work in. His go-to guy right now has got to be Khalil Shakir, which he started stepping out into the limelight.
He's relevant for sure,
last season too. So that's got to be his guy that he can trust here too. So it's going to be interesting for the Bills because, like you said, that window that people talk about, it's tough here because you still got Kansas City, despite of what they've gone through last season with, again, not, having a hodgepodge of wide receivers here and there. It was nice to see the emergence of,
they hit on Rashee Rice.
Yes. But besides that, they still powered through it and won the Super Bowl. So you still have that contender there that has been the Achilles heel of the Buffalo Bills so far. If it wasn't them, it was Joe Burrow and the Bengals. And luckily kind of for them in the fact that the Bengals really didn't do much last year, even before Burrow got hurt. So it's going to be interesting. The AFC picture is all over the map. So Jets
all
fans got to feel maybe a little better about that. I know that for sure. I think they're happy to see kind of Diggs go. So
the other thing that I'll say too is I feel like what the Bills are doing too is, yes, they lost some players, but they were older vets. So they're allowing the older vets to move on, and they're either re-signing younger guys that were up and coming through their roster, or they know that they're getting back younger players that are going to be healthy for this upcoming year. Think of a Taron Johnson, who played cornerback, started for a while, got injured, obviously, but now that he's going to be coming back, he's going to fill that starting role at corner, and then the Bills are also looking to get, obviously, they're looking to get younger and cheaper in a lot of different areas. So look for them to just completely focus on the draft. I know they pulled off a kind of like a low-end signing. Was it today or yesterday? La'el Collins, I think it was today, right tackle, who formerly was a very sought-after right tackle, but now with his injury a couple years ago, obviously he's kind of come down a little bit in terms of tiers as an offensive line. But if he can stay healthy,
That's
you got a plug-and-play type of right tackle that's going to help you, and then they're looking towards the draft to obviously address wide receiver and a bunch of other positions.
All right, talking about offensive line, Joe, we've got
Yes,
Franklin
sir.
Adams in the house tonight.
What's going on, Frank? How you doing, brother? He goes, Jets seem like they are going all in on their O-line. Also adding Reddick for the edge. What should Joe Douglas do in the draft? Wide receiver possibly, quarterback possibly, more on the O-line. Well, here's the thing is like, this is the part of the draft, right, Frank, where a lot of us, and I think this year more than ever, are very kind of confused on what teams are going to be doing, because the draft isn't just one round. It's at least 7, and sometimes if you're lucky, you have more than 7 picks. But for the Jets at 10 in the first round, it's going to be very interesting what they do, because they've already, like you mentioned, they've already addressed the offensive line heavily in free agency. They've shored up on a lot of positions there to where it frees that team up to where they can do whatever they wish. Do I think they'll go offensive line again after spending the kind of money that they did on O-line? I don't. I definitely could see them go a couple of other ways, though. I know that obviously Robert Saleh, your head coach, is a defensive-minded guy. He could literally go after maybe another big-time defensive player, but I think what they really need is another weapon there. I think that they could be looking at wide receivers. They could be even looking at maybe a Brock Bowers to put him into that tight end / slot role for Rodgers to throw to. And when you look at that team overall right now, really that's all they're really missing right now, and especially on offense. They've done they spent a lot of money and allocated it towards the offensive line. They shored that up. It looks really good on paper. It does. They've filled all those holes up front. They look like they're ready to go. It's just they could use a couple more pieces, probably more like weapons, wide receiver, tight end, have you, and then look to see what they're going to do maybe in the second round. That's where they can maybe attack defensive player or something of that nature. So they could go quarterback at 10. It's always a possibility, right? Like it's not, the end all be all, like, oh, they're definitely not going quarterback.
Yeah.
You can never say that about any team, really.
Yeah.
But I just don't think with the first round pick, knowing how close the Jets actually are to turning this thing around and becoming a major presence in the AFC East, I think that they might add a little bit more weaponry to that arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like the right choice, at least at this point right here. But I know, again, we've seen different things before. And being at that spot again, that early, in top 10 is with this quarterback class is a good shot here. But we've seen some of these quarterbacks fall too. Like we saw, like Will Levis, who was a highly sought, quarterback before the draft. Mm-hmm. Then he started to drop during the draft, and the Titans ended up picking him. And they already had Malik Willis that they had, got earlier, a year before. And like you said, they kind of went back to back. You know, they weren't sure what on Malik, so they go and say, "What the hell? Will Levis drop this far? We'll go in on him." And now it looks like that he is then their true starter now, and they found it. So if the Jets, if somebody like drops back for one of these quarterbacks for some reason before we get to the draft, they could all of a sudden turn back in, get back up in here, and maybe pull off a trade to get back in here to get a quarterback.
And the whole
later on.
scenario of all of that for Tennessee was they didn't believe Malik Willis was going to be ready quick enough. I don't think Tennessee really
would you say the same thing about Zach Wilson, though, possibly?
I don't know. I don't think you could really sit there and say, "Oh, I knew." Like when I was watching Malik Willis, I thought his potential is through the roof. He could be really good. But you also knew that there was a shit ton of development. Like this kid needed to be retooled, reprogrammed, and worked with throughout his career, probably 4 years down the road, that he was going to turn out to be anything. So I think Tennessee didn't realize the amount of work that was going to have to be put into and instilled into Malik Willis, that when they got him in camp and everything, like, oh crap, man, this is a long reclamation project. I don't know if we have that kind of time. Knowing that Ryan Tannehill was at the end of his years, knowing that he could potentially be injured, then what are we going to do? They all saw glimpses of Malik Willis, obviously, when Tannehill went down, about what he could do and how he struggled. And then that's what kind of led them to drafting Will Levis. Luckily, was there in the second round for them to take, and they were like, we can't pass this up.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity. Got to do it. So now it looks like Will Levis, they've already kind of crowned him the starter, looked really good at times. And obviously, he was a rookie last year. He's got to work on a few things, but still, he looks very promising for the Titans.
All right, we got John Turner in the house with us too.
Yeah, John Turner says, if he can stay healthy, here's a little saying I invented. If ifs and buts were candy and nuts, every day would be Christmas. There you go. John Turner with his words and wisdoms of the day. I gotta say,
we say it is a saying that people do say all the time now too. Again, if this guy could only stay healthy, he can. Right. But we saw even kind of with Saquon Barkley though too. When he was healthy, he was productive, and now even from what he did last year, playing through a full season,
right,
has now that contract he wanted and plays in Philly now.
Yeah,
that's what happens, and that's what this turns into, and that's why those things are even thrown around there. But I also like the sayings that John Turner throws out there too. They are pretty amazing because exactly the ifs and buts. Absolutely,
John, the OG know-it-all himself,
is there. So I mean, there we go. The trades, and we might see some more here before the trade deadline here, or before the draft and stuff like that. So we're gonna be looking out for that. Let us know again more things in the comments of what you guys think.
Yeah, Frank, appreciate the comment, bro. Like, keep it coming. Don't even have to stop there. Like, if you really want to talk more Jets, we'll definitely talk about it. Listen, we're the most interactive show that you're going to find. So we're going to react to you guys. We're going to talk about things that you guys want to talk about, but we also have our own things that in case it gets a little stagnant in the comment section that we can talk about as well. And of course, it's about the draft. John Turner just chimed in, said, Philly, where signed running backs go to die.
I told you.
That's right.
You know what?
I said that too. I mean, that's what it is.
So here's the thing, is that mantra didn't apply last year. DeAndre Swift had a very good year.
Yeah.
And
I think they still didn't use him like they could have even more. They could have did it more.
They definitely needed to utilize him more. And I think that's partially their offense on how they like to run things. So if you're a running back, that's especially like Saquon Barkley, right? The contract that he actually demanded and received, and now that you've invested that kind of money into the running back position that you normally don't utilize a ton, you think things change now? Because you're paying them a boatload of money to be there. So, like, does that change the offense now? Are they going to be a little bit 50-50 or 60-40 run? Because money talks.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. They should. At least at this point, you have to.
Until the wheels fall off for Saquon. Like, what if he gets injured this year? You know what I mean? And it's like,
for me, it was always almost like with Philly though. Like, why though? Because I thought you could have even kept Swift too. You know, I mean, you could just
could have re-signed him
unless
for
he
way
was maybe
cheaper.
asking for
Way
something.
cheaper.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. You could have kept him and for way cheaper, and still been able to even get somebody else that's to help your roster or bolster it more than what it already is.
right.
You know, maybe something even more on defense because some of your guys are getting older and in the tooth in defense. Something like that. But that's why I thought the move didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
But whatever. If Philly's going to spend some more money and maybe, damage themselves, I'm for it, Joe. Absolutely.
right. Of course you
Bring it
are.
on. Bring it on. And they go to get, my running back. That's fine. Whatever. That makes me hate you more. That's fine. Whatever. We're good on that. All right. So I will keep
Yes,
the
sir.
comments rolling. Absolutely. But
Yeah,
Joe,
listen, if you're new to the show, Frank, we know that we just saw you here tonight.
He's been
Do us
here
a
a few
huge favor.
times.
Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Also hit the notification bell, let you guys know when we go live. And also you can follow us anywhere you get your podcast. So like, share, comment, do the whole jazz and try to boost us up here a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Joe. All right. So here we go. It's time for your top 10 list. That's right. The draft is coming up.
It is.
Joe DeCapita's
Getting
list here.
close.
He does all the scouting and tells you what he thinks here about these guys coming up, moving forward. And right now, this week we're gonna do 3 lists. A
Three
week here,
positions.
right? 3
Yep.
positions per week.
So we're going to do
until the show.
three tonight.
Yes.
We're going to do 3 next week.
Yes.
And then we'll finish off with two
With
positions.
Two positions.
For the third week, leading
Yeah.
up to the draft, and then we know all you guys are anticipating this, but we also do a mock draft the night before the draft actually happens. So, and the reason why we do that is obviously, like we talk about when we do our evaluations for prospects coming out, we like to wait a little bit longer for try to get as much information as possible, but also same thing goes into the mock draft is how much closer can you get the night before to, like, we might hear some rumors and stuff that might kind of critique our opinions or maybe a selection that we might have. So it's going to be a very fun discussion, I'll say, for that mock draft.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Joe. All right. So let's get to it. First off, we're going to start with offensive lineman here, Joe. Here's
Offensive lineman.
your top 10 list. What do you want to do? You want to go 10 to 1? What do you want?
We'll do 10-1.
All right, here we go.
Keep
Here
it
we go.
suspenseful.
Yeah, here we go. All right, here we go. Your 10th
All right.
alignment here.
Number 10, I have guard Cooper Beebe from Kansas State. And mind you, this offensive line top 10 is basically all offensive linemen. This is center, guards, tackles kind of mixed in together. So Cooper Beebe, a lot of people view Cooper Beebe as the number 1 guard coming out. Very good player. The only problem for me is, like, the game tape looks good. He does a lot of things super solid, super well, a technician of sorts. But my knock on him is when it comes down to metrics, is where, like, he doesn't have the biggest hands. He doesn't have the longest arms. I'm trying to project what he's going to turn into at the next level, where you're dealing with a lot of D linemen that have long arms, that are very strong. You know what I mean? Can he hold up to them? So it's not, I'm not saying Cooper Beebe can't be a really good guard at the next level. I'm just saying, for my list overall, I got him a little bit lower than most. I got him at 10.
All right, next up, number 9.
Number 9, I have yet another guard, and someone that's kind of gone missing is Zach Zinter from Michigan. He got injured towards the end of this past year, where obviously with injuries, teams kind of freak out a little bit, and they're like, well, we're not going to take the guy early now, even though he might have been pretty good. Now we might be able to wait a couple more rounds, maybe 3 rounds later. But Zach Zinter was the guy that was ascending as a potential top guard, prospect. Coming out of Michigan, they breed a lot of good linemen, especially on the offensive side. And Zach Zinter is no exception. This guy can definitely bring it. He's got a little bit of a mean streak to him, which I really love in an offensive lineman. And I think he could do well at the next level. Still needs to develop a few more things, but nonetheless, I got him at number 9. And number 8, I have Christian Haynes from UConn. This is my top guard. This is the guy that I would pick above Cooper, above Zach. I really love Christian Haynes from UConn because he's such a nasty offensive lineman. He's a guy that plays through the whistle. very aggressive, very strong, very well balanced, and definitely can halt you really quick with his punch. So Christian Haynes, I have him at number 8. I got him as my top guard, but I have him at 8 there. At number 7, for offensive lineman, I got Troy Fontenot from Washington. He's starting to ascend a lot of draft boards. He's starting to move up a lot as we get closer to the draft. People really like his game, and there's a lot to like. He can play right tackle or left tackle, so he's versatile. He's a very big technician. Not the tallest out of the offensive linemen, but still, to me, height doesn't really matter. If you can be a technician and you're strong enough, I think at the next level, he will need to bulk up a little bit more. But nonetheless, if you're talking about straight up offensive lineman that can block and do everything well, that's the guy for you at 7. Number 6, I have Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon. He's a center, by the way, and he is definitely my favorite center, probably in the last 5 years of the draft. Wow. This guy is absolutely amazing. When I watch him, nobody gets by him. He does everything exceptionally well. His run blocking is tenacious. His pass blocking, you're not getting by him. As soon as he gets his hands on you, you're done. Moves extremely well for his size, kind of bigger, like 330 for a center, which is something that you got to like. He's not going to be moved at all. So I got him at 6. Definitely an impact type player. Whoever gets this guy, most likely he's getting taken in the first round. It obviously might not be top half of the draft, but maybe in the lower 15 of the draft is where this guy's going to go, whether it be maybe a team like Seattle or something that could utilize more interior offensive line help. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, whoever takes this, man, this dude's going to be a plug-and-play type player right away. Then we get to the number 5s here. I have Olu Fashanu from Penn State. A lot of people have Olu as the second or first rated offensive lineman. For me, the reason why he slipped down for me is because although he's extremely athletic, has the size, has long arms, he's seen as one of the best pass protectors in this draft. But when it comes to run blocking, there's a lot of times on tape where he struggles a little bit here and there, where he might slip off a block or might not make good enough contact and the player makes a play, on that down. Fashanu, to me, is a phenomenal pass blocker, but he needs to develop the run blocking part of his game to really be a top-notch tackle. He's still in my top 5, mm-hmm. and I want to make that perfectly clear. Just because I have him at 5 doesn't mean I don't think he's going to be anything at the next level. Mm-hmm. Guy's gifted. He's definitely going to be a high pick. And whoever gets him, they definitely need to work on that run development of his game.
Yeah, and this is everybody combined. All offensive linemen isn't just guards.
All positions.
And things like that, so.
And you'll see the same kind of thing for a lot of other lists. Is that tackles do rise to the top, much like a quarterback for his position. Quarterbacks get pushed up. So, and that's where we seen a run right here in the top 5 is all tackles. Mm-hmm. At 4, I have J.C. Latham from Alabama, and I have to tell you, as a Raiders fan, Alabama offensive linemen terrify me when they're coming out in the draft. They seem to never turn out to be anything. You're a Giants fan, Jim.
Yep.
Evan Neal, you guys drafted him. He's not playing up to par. Yep. And it just seems, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just the university. I don't know if it's the player themselves. Or maybe it's the talent around them that kind of gets camouflaged. But for some strange reason, Alabama offensive linemen typically don't pan out where they're seen as. So J.C. Latham, I have him at 4 because there's a lot that's hard to reject. Like you look at his tape, it's pretty darn solid. Phenomenal run blocker. Like this guy will literally run you over. Big, massive type of dude, long arms, very strong. But then the reason why he's at 4 for me is that, I don't know, sometimes he just flat out misses guys. And it kind of makes you scratch your head like, all right, what did I just see? So is that going to be a problem at the next level where you're going to have to deal with guys like, Max Crosby, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, the list goes on and on,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Nick Bosa. So
right.
Guys that are
We've
not
kind of
just
seen the same thing with Evan Neal. Same type of deal.
guys that are not just athletic, also strong, also quick and fast, and now you got to deal with them on an every week basis. So something is like everybody has this guy really high, but I don't know. Latham to me is kind of a little bit skeptical. Then we get to the top three here. Amarius Mims from Georgia. Another dude that is gigantic, 6'9", 340 pounds of a mountain. You're not getting around him. The guy's very athletic for his size. You wouldn't think that, but he is strong, athletic. One thing for Mims at the next level is he needs to work a little bit more on his run blocking. It's not poor. It's not bad. It's good, but it needs to be better than good. Especially for where he's going to be taken in the first round. Needs to develop that part, but he's not far off. I think he's one of the more underrated type of tackles, and that's why I have him rated in my top three at 3. And then the top two guys, Talise Fuaga from Oregon State at 2. This dude is the best pure right tackle in this draft. Super powerful. Another guy that I really like that has that nasty attitude, that doesn't kind of let up before the play's over with. And I just think the world of this guy. Guy's better than I think is being projected as. I think he could do very well for whoever takes him. I could even see this guy being taken in the top 10. I really can. Same thing with Joe Alt. Joe Alt is just super solid all around. And you ask anybody right now, he's pretty much the consensus number 1 offensive lineman is Joe Alt from Notre Dame. Does everything extremely well, is super aware, very strong, pass protection, run blocking, everything is just kind of check the boxes type of thing. So that's kind of where I finish off with my list at offensive lineman.
And his father was a good offensive lineman in the NFL
really
as well, John.
Really good.
So, again, sometimes some of these guys, and that's what's funny, Joe, is we see these guys growing up playing and everything. Now where their kids are coming through here and they're breeding these great athletes, you know what I'm saying? So like we see Marvin Harrison Jr. and everything too as well. So it's pretty amazing to see this stuff. Mike Tackett's in the house with us tonight.
What's going on, Mike?
Hashtag know-it-all.
Nice emoji.
All right, emoji. Is that the salute? Boom.
He's saluting.
All right, good to see you, buddy. All right, so yeah, that's right. We're doing Joe's top 10. He just handled the offensive lineman.
Top 10, yeah.
That's right.
And then
now,
here's the funny part about this whole process is like the honorable mention list
yes,
is actually longer than what
I
you
know,
see.
right? Yeah, it's because it's so tough, especially when you're mixing them all together.
Yeah,
in
it
one
makes it
top
really hard.
10 list, the whole offensive line, and that's what kind of makes these lists kind of funny too, and where people will start, asking you like, why is this guy missed?
Right.
Because we're not talking all tackles and then all centers, and then it's what you like, what you think possibly, but what you see yourself, and compared in a whole top 10 list of everybody. So
Right.
I mean, somebody's not going to make it, even though
Exactly.
you might want them to.
Even though they might be really good players.
Yeah, and they're not saying that they're not. But
Just to name a couple, Zach Frazier from West Virginia. A lot of people kind of have him either 2, right behind Cooper Beebe as a guard or something like that, but he didn't quite make my top 10. Graham Barton from Duke, a guy that can play literally every offensive lineman position. It's crazy. But the problem for me is a lot of people might have Graham Barton in their top 10, but when I look at him, it's like you definitely need to get stronger for the next level. 2, everything is small in terms of metrics. Short arms, little hands. Normally doesn't really apply at the next level. You may struggle, but maybe you could be, the miracle of that whole argument. But then there's other guys like Roger Rosengarten, who's kind of lately starting to track upwards because of his size at 6'6", 300. Another guy who's very good at pass protection, but is okay at run blocking. So obviously. And you go down the list, Patrick Paul from Houston and so on and so on. There's always going to be great talent after your top 10, top 20. But it's, can these guys at the next level develop quick enough to be your starter right away? Or can they develop enough in the long term, maybe a year or 2 down the road, to become a legitimate starter in this league and help out? So that's what you're seeing, is that there's not only just an absolute ton of potential in the offensive line grouping, but it depends on what you like you just mentioned. Every team's different. Every team drafts different. Some guys might view long arm, tall type of lineman as their go-to type of guy, but other teams might view, I like the squatty, shorter guy that's already got leverage underneath you, super strong.
Yeah.
So it goes back and forth. But I'll tell you this right now, and I know I told you, Jim, kind of like off camera before, is that this draft, trying to dissect all these players was the hardest I've ever had to deal with. Like, it's super hard with how talented and how deep some of these positions are.
Speaking of deep talent, Mike Tackett's here. He says, love this year's offensive defensive lines class. Very deep. Everyone is talking about the quarterbacks.
Right.
Look out for quality offensive line and defensive line. Drafted in the mid to later rounds. Offensive line, defensive line depth is so important at this level. Finding a sixth man for the rotation is not easy.
And it definitely isn't. And that's the thing is, any teams that are in need or maybe could use extra help, O-line, D-line, this year is the year to draft. And you can even see some of these teams, possibly the Jets, definitely maybe Tennessee, maybe the Raiders, maybe the Giants. There's a bunch of teams up and down the draft board that all could use help or definitely need more help at those positions. And this is the perfect draft to do it because, honestly, you might even see potential starters going in the 4th round, 5th round, which is insane to think about. But it happens. But this year, more likely than any other.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Joe, we just handled, again, the offensive line. Time to get to your defensive line here, top 10. Let's have at it.
Yes,
Number
sir.
10.
Number 10. All right. So I got Jonah Ellis from Utah. Jonah Ellis, if you're looking for a up and coming, and he's starting to ascend right now with the way teams are viewing him, is pure pass rusher. Just this guy, if you want him to get after the quarterback, turn him loose and let him go. Definitely needs to get a little bit bigger at the next level. So that part of his game is, but he's one of the very few pass rushers in this draft that already have a plethora of pass rushing moves, like has a ton of different types and moves and counters that you really like for him coming into the league and probably taking getting a big step forward for his production. So Jonah Ellis at Utah, really love that kid. Some people don't even have him in the top 10, but there's just something about him when you watch him on tape, how explosive he is and fast around the corner. And you're going to see there's a few others that are in my top 10 that are kind of like him, but they all have small differences. Number 9, we talk about small differences. This is a very huge difference. T'Vondre Sweat from Texas, massive D tackle. This dude is like 360. Humongous human being. But you would think that with a guy that big, he's lethargic, he can't move. This guy's the exception to the rule. He's quick, athletic, agile, and he's a tremendous, great run-stuffing presence, as he should be with that kind of size. But he takes it a step further. He has some pass rushing ability that was displayed at Texas, especially this year, where it wasn't just his counterpart Byron Murphy doing a lot of the work. Right. T'Vondre Sweat surprisingly was being lined up not just at D tackle but also D end, believe it or not. So very, very big on versatility, but does a lot of things well. But if you're looking for a guy to help with the run game and also maybe get a little bonus, pass rush from him, T'Vondre Sweat could be your guy. At number 8, going back to that Jonah Ellis comparison a little bit, Chop Robinson from Penn State. This is another guy who is extremely quick, extremely fast. You think of Nolan Smith back at Georgia, similar type of player, very quick and fast, explosive, great pass rusher for Penn State. The problem with Chop, and the reason why I have him lower than I probably would put this type of player, is because he's very freakish, but he gives me a little Vic Beasley vibes. Like a guy who has all this tremendous athletic ability, but when you watch the tape, he's literally running around tackles. Nobody gets their hands on him. Yeah. He just uses his quickness and speed and just runs right around him. So my thing is, and what kind of puts a question mark on this guy for me, is the fact that, like, at the next level, you're dealing with top end talent every week, especially offensive linemen. They get their hands on you. Can you break free? Can you disengage? Are you going to struggle at the next level because of that? Because I've seen him when teams were running at him, he could not disengage. He had a hard time. They just were literally running him out of the play. Are you just a pass rusher? And if so, are you just a rotational guy? Are you a guy that's not going to get on the field enough? Do I view him as a first-round pick? Not anymore. I did early on in the process because of, obviously, his freakish abilities. But I got to tell you, I'm a little concerned at the next level. Is he just going to utilize, I'm quicker and faster than most guys, I can just run around this guy, or I can run in the gap quicker than he can get his hands on me? Because if that's the mentality at the next level, you need to develop this kid's pass rushing moves. He has none. He just used his natural ability to get around guys a lot of the times and chase down players. So at the next level, you're going to have to do a lot more development than I think teams are going to be in favor of doing. So that's why I have him at 8. Number 7, I have another D tackle from Michigan.
Yes.
Your Michigan Wolverines.
Absolutely.
Chris Jenkins. A guy who isn't being talked enough about, I feel like, especially for the D tackle position. I know it's super deep and everything, but Chris Jenkins does a lot of things extremely well. He plays the run extremely well. He can give you a little bit more pass rushing than he's, a lot of teams are looking at him as maybe just a run stopper and nothing more. But I still think this guy is going to be an excellent D tackle all around. Definitely has the size to handle the position. Definitely is going to be one of your best run stuffers, but also I think he has some added pass rushing moves to go with all that.
Another guy who has the pedigree again too as well.
Right, exactly. Yeah, Chris his
Jenkins
father
is the
playing
father.
with the Panthers. And that's the thing, is you're going to see bloodlines kicking into this draft as well. Number 6, I have a guy who kind of slid a little bit for me. I had him pretty high beforehand, but then some information came out that he sustained quite a few injuries at the combine, didn't test extremely well with injuries, has a little bit longer of a history than I thought he did, but that steps him down. I don't think he's going to be a bad player, but Braden Fisk exploded on the combine, like athletically tested overly well than what people thought he could do, had the fastest 40 out of any D tackle, had the quickest, 10-yard split. Like, this guy was just a freak. At the combine. But when you look at his tape, here's the crazy thing, is he has shorter arms than most D tackles you would like to have. But he doesn't allow these linemen to get inside him. He has such quick hands and great counter moves to break the grip of the offensive lineman that I don't see it being a problem at the next level. He's just too quick and fast and active with his hands that he's going to turn out to be a pretty darn good player. I just don't know how long can he hold up. And the other part of it is that he's a little older than you would like a prospect coming out of college. Has a lot of experience. Still, for me personally, I don't think age is a major factor. If you can have the guy for 6 to 8 years and he pans out, I think you did your job as a GM. So I have him at 6 here. At number 5, a lot of people are going to completely disagree with this one, but Laiatu Latu, who's seen as the best pass rusher coming out, pretty much consensus. But I have him at 5 because even though he's probably one of the best benders around the corner, he's fast, he's athletic, he's quick, he's got everything else, and he's another player that you don't need to teach him pass rush moves. This guy has an arsenal of them. So I'm not worried about him as a player, standpoint. But what I'm worried about is at the next level, when you're facing bigger, stronger offensive linemen and more technique savvy offensive linemen. Like, I watched game tape. It was Laiatu Latu versus Talisi Fuaga. And Fuaga locked him up, and he didn't do anything all game pretty much. Like, ridiculous. So my thing is for Latu at the next level, do you need to get stronger? do you need you need better coaching maybe to get off of blocks when they get their hands on you. So for Latu, a lot of people think him as a high-end type of first-round pick or maybe even mid-tier, but I got him a little bit lower on mine because I'm kind of trying to gauge like what's going to happen at the next level. Are you going to become Von Miller 2.0 or are you going to become a Vic Beasley? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Where you disappear. So could go either way. For me, he's kind of boom or bust, even though a lot of people have him more boom. But that's at 5. What do we got? Mike Tackett just said. Maintaining gap integrity, gap responsibility is where you'll start to see a separation from average to really good. Everyone is athletic, big, strong, and fast in the NFL. It's preparation and discipline. Yeah, I mean, it is. And it's work ethic. It's everything. You know, and I guess that's the hardest part for a lot of talent evaluators or people that are really into this and trying to scout players is we don't get the privilege of knowing information like that.
Yeah, right.
Like talking to the prospect, you know, right. Seeing what kind of head do they have on their shoulders? Are they family oriented? Are they willing to give you the shirt off their back? You know what I mean? Little nuances like that. Are they always in the gym? Do they have high work ethic?
Yeah.
You know, I didn't have such a great year last year. I'm in the gym. I'm in with the coaches. I'm working hard for next year.
Yeah.
So those type of things we don't know about. And you most likely, even for NFL teams, you really won't truly know until you get them on the field.
Mm-hmm.
So number 4, I have Dallas Turner from Alabama. Mm-hmm. A lot of people have him as the best overall talent at D-line, D-end. I have a little bit of a question mark for Dallas Turner. And you might even see that coming up in the next list. Is Dallas Turner, I'm not 100% sure what exactly he is. He's a phenomenal pass rusher. But given his great physical talents that he has, big, physical, like we all say this all the time, very explosive type of player off the edge, he needs to develop more pass rush moves. That's something that is a weakness of his right now. If he's going to really be a pass rusher off the edge, he definitely needs to get with the coaches, figure out some different moves to teach him, and also counter moves against the top-tier offensive lineman that he's going to have to go against. But that's if he's a pass rusher. You'll see in the next list possibly why I think maybe he might have a position change.
Yes.
Number 3, I have Jared Verse from Florida State. Now, Jared Verse, going into this whole thing, I had him as my number 1 D end because I love the size, the strength, the power that he has. And that's what he is. He's a little bit different. He's not a guy that's he has pretty good get off the ball quickness for sure. He has obviously top end speed, especially for his size. But what he doesn't have is great pass rush moves. And that's something that he definitely needs to work on at the next level, but he has power. The best power out of anybody as a D end. Mm-hmm. This guy will literally take your or offensive tackle and push him right into the quarterback or the running back. Mm-hmm. So that's what I love about him because he can not only set the edge with his power, he can play the run well. He can also rush the passer. But like I said before, he needs to develop that part of his game a little bit better with his pass rush moves. If he can do that, he could be a dominating D end at the next level. That's why he's at 3. And for my next 2, at 2 and 1, I have both D tackles, which is kind of surprising. Usually you see D ends this high. Mm-hmm. But because there's some question marks for me anyways with Turner, Verse, Latu, and et cetera, I got these guys. These guys are going to be amazing. So at number 2, I have Jerzon Newton, a.k.a. Johnny Newton from Illinois. Guy that he's just amazing. Just amazing. Guy reacts, is super aware, knows how to set up offensive linemen for a counter move that he may have to use. Great pass rusher, great run stopper, and his football IQ is through the roof. The same thing could be said about Byron Murphy, who I have as at number 1. Mm-hmm. Byron Murphy, the second from Texas. He's my number 1 D tackle, and I'll tell you why. When you look at some specimens that are coming into the league, you kind of want to see depending on their position, obviously. You want to see an athletic look, a guy that might look better for the position he's going to be playing in. When you look at Johnny Newton, he looks like a bowling ball. But this bowling ball can really flat out play. Now, you could list Byron Murphy and Newton as 1A, 1B, essentially. They both do slightly different things. Murphy is just kind of like this, we talk about bull in a china closet. Murphy is just an absolute disaster waiting to happen. This guy literally turns offensive linemen into mush. Like they don't have an answer for him. He can outmuscle you. He's taken on double teams and disengages when he feels like it. Super strong athlete. I'm not taking anything away from Newton. Newton is just as good. But I'll say this from just watching film, Murphy looks a little bit more disruptive to me, to where I think he's worth a pick. Anywhere past 12 is where I would take Byron Murphy or Johnny Newton. But I definitely would take Murphy first. He's just become this one player that I keep watching, and I don't see necessarily any big flaws in his game. Newton is the same kind of way. So if you're looking for D tackle, you can't go wrong with either. But if it's my personal preference, I like Murphy.
All right, so there you go. There's Joe's top 10 defensive linemen here of this 2024 NFL draft. That's right. What do you guys think about the list? What do you guys think out there? What are your lists? Who do you think is the top guy coming in and out of these lines here? We already did offensive line, defensive line. We are going to head to linebackers in just a bit. But Joe, yeah, I mean, this draft coming up. I always say this every year again.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen and stuff like that. And when we even maybe think we have a shot or what teams might do, something still happens and blows your mind on the draft night.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I honestly don't think this draft here is going to be the most perplexing one. Like, I know we've done drafts before, and we've hit pretty good on the last couple of drafts. We've gotten probably like six right in the top half of the draft. Last year, and then even
year
down
before
towards the end.
Overall, we had like 11 right all total or something.
Right.
Which was pretty decent for where they were. That was the trade year with, A.J. Brown and everything and stuff like that, where shit just got flipped upside down.
Right.
So.
But that's the thing, too, is like, we look at those years, they were kind of straightforward. You can kind of make the argument like, oh, they're definitely taking a tackle. Oh, they're definitely taking a wide receiver. Oh, they're taking a D end.
This guy's here. They got to go grab him, and then it's on your.
I'm just saying, but this year, any team can go a number of different ways. And I don't think it's going to be as clear cut as it was in the last couple of drafts. So that's what's going to make it interesting to try to figure out as we get closer, for sure.
All right, here we go. So that's right. Offensive linemen, defensive linemen are out. Joe,
that's right.
You said there could be a surprise or maybe not. So in the list here of your 2024 NFL draft, top 10 linebackers.
Yeah, and the other funny thing about the linebackers is they're not, unlike O-line and D-line, the linebackers aren't as deep. But you can find some maybe developmental linebackers in the middle to late rounds that could turn out to be starters, given on if they have good coaching or not. So there are some sneaky players in this list that I feel like could have the potential to develop into a starter. They might not be it right away, but there's also guys that may, in the middle of the list, that could start right away and kind of maybe learn as they go type of deal. So
right. And the funny thing is for me with linebackers is it is tough to see where some of these guys, if it is a hit or miss or not. Again, we're going to be doing in a little bit, a few weeks, probably the week after or so, the draft. We're going to go take a look back at the 2021 draft and grade some of these guys and say if it was a hit or miss or a pass or fail. And
gas or trash.
We've seen linebackers where they've had some good years and then all of a sudden just taper off. And then all of a sudden now they're not even on the same team anymore. Within a few years.
Yeah.
But then what even is it that makes some of these guys be those, have the longevity and be like a Bobby Wagner and be successful throughout their careers and things like that? It's going to be interesting to see where some of these linebackers are in a few years after this.
Yeah, you look at Kenneth Murray right now. Kenneth Murray, drafted by the Chargers, was seen to be this unbelievable linebacker coming in, high potential type of guy. And he is. He's sideline to sideline, makes a lot of tackles. Had a actually really good year. Had over 120 tackles last year for the Chargers, stopping the run and what have you. Also could cover. But in the end, this past offseason, the Chargers had no interest, it seemed like, to re-sign him. They let him walk out. He's on with another team now, and he'll be a starter for them. But it's like, and good, especially great linebackers, they don't grow on trees.
Right.
So when you have it's almost like with the analogy of quarterbacks. Like when you have a starting caliber quarterback, you never move on from them unless you have to.
Right.
Same thing you could make the argument for as linebackers because there's not a lot of them that are really good. Like there's good linebackers, but not like elite type of guys.
Yes.
Like Jack Campbell, who the Lions drafted last year, I think eventually he could become elite, but had a great rookie year. Let's see if it continues.
If it continues.
And that's the thing is when you have one, you need to hold on to it.
Absolutely.
And I'll say this too, leading up to this linebacker list. Some of the guys, the way I've ranked O-line, D-line, and now linebackers, some of it is personal preference, what I personally like in a linebacker or whatever, and that's why I have them rated higher or lower. But then there's also that potential thing. I don't know about you, Jim, but whenever our teams draft, whenever the NFL, they have their draft and everything, right? And they pick certain players, and you're like, I don't know about that guy. Like, you really wanted him at 17? I think you could have got him at 22 if you wanted to trade down, whatever. Sometimes I get a little confused with how teams view certain players because we call them reaches, right? When we see a player we never anticipated being picked in that round and they get picked and you're like, who's that guy? Where did he come from?
Yeah.
Oh, he's from New Mexico State. Like, what? I didn't even know this guy was going to be picked this high. So sometimes, as a fan or even someone that you try to do your best in scouting, you got sometimes these guys that come out of nowhere, like a Cole Strange for the Patriots.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Cole Strange has got to be your guy, right?
So it's like, this just proves to you, like, teams don't normally, like, they don't go with the consensus, right? They don't go with, like, so a lot of people view Dallas Turner as this high-end pass rusher, what have you. But what's to say if Verse gets picked in front of him? What's to say if somebody else gets picked in front of both of them?
Yes.
Like, teams view guys a different way, or maybe it's a scheme fit. Maybe it's just certain attributes they like better than others. So that's what makes the draft always very interesting, and do you prefer, like, when you hear a name that you didn't anticipate for your team get picked for your team, and you're like, I don't know anything about this guy. Like, do you go into, like, doing a little bit of research to find out who he is,
right,
and why they picked him? You know what I mean? Because that's always the big question mark.
Yeah, because, at least like you said before, we don't have all the inside news. So what do we have? We all have only what the insiders or what we're hearing around either the internet or television. That's all we're hearing.
Or something you see on tape.
Like that, or something you might have been able to do if you have been doing even your research, if you could. So it's tough. And even like you said, when they're going to pick some of these guys that are outside the box, it's whether it's kind of their guy in having those types of conversations, or they figure if just a little bit of work, this guy, his potential is probably bigger than this guy over here. We saw something like that with Andrew Thomas with the New York Giants. He was picked early on before a bunch of others that were kind of already set to be
Georgia.
there. And he was kind of looked at as like, well, he needs a little bit of work,
I liked it. I liked the pick.
They got it, and now after that little bit time with him, he got it around, and now it was worth the wait. You know what I mean? So a few years, and now he's there, and now he's our best offensive lineman.
Yeah, and you can only hope for Evan Neal to have the same kind of thing to kind of like wake up in a sense.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're getting moved to guard.
Yes.
So we'll see.
So I think there's been enough lead up to this one, Joe.
Has there?
Yes.
We could do more.
The tension is killing me here. You could cut it with a knife.
Yeah, I'm sure. Anyway, we're getting to the linebackers here.
There we go.
So at number 10, I have Kalen DeLoach from Florida State, a player that, and kind of when we were talking about linebackers, some guys, they have the potential. This is one of those guys. Has the potential to later on maybe become a starter. If not, he'll be a special teams guy. He'll be a guy who is in the rotation, so to speak, but has potential to maybe be a starter, at the next level. But Kalen DeLoach from Florida State has to work on a few things, especially like read and reacting to runs. I feel like he takes too much time to react and trust his eye. He needs to trust his eyes is what he needs to do and just go for it. So I have him at number 10. Number 9, I have Edifwan Ulafoshio. Yeah, the very difficult name from Washington. This is one of these guys that I really like him. He's not being talked about really hardly at all, but kind of under the radar type of linebacker that I feel like could maybe be a starter for somebody. You get him in the middle to late rounds. You bring him in, see what he can do with your scheme and whatnot. I think he could be a sleeper of sorts to look out for from Washington. Number 8, I have Tommy Eichenberg from Ohio State, a guy who doesn't necessarily have the speed, the quickness, the kind of the intangibles that you look for in every athlete. But he is just a blue chip type of linebacker, old school type of linebacker, guy that is like a lunch pail guy, brings his lunch to work every day, is going to put in all the work that he possibly can and be the best every week for you. Great tackler, doesn't miss a tackle. Definitely read and reacts extremely well, and he has a high football IQ, so he can do that. But again, doesn't have the athletic traits as you would like a linebacker at the next level to have. But again, maybe you take this guy later on and he gets in there. Maybe he's just a special teams guy, but has the potential to develop into a starter at some point. Number 7, I got Trevin Wallace from Kentucky. This is one of the guys that I'm really excited about because he definitely needs to work a little bit more on his coverage part of his game, but a guy who's very quick, very fast, can fly all over the football field and make tackles, stops the run. He does a lot of those things very well. I'm excited to see, like, maybe if he gets in with a good coaching staff for linebackers, that they can develop that other part of his game for coverage, and then he'll definitely be a starter for you on the outside. Number 6, I have Cedric Gray from North Carolina, another guy who has the potential to be a starter, but at the next level, obviously needs to figure out the rest of his game. Another player that needs to work on coverage a little bit better. But again, quick, fast, sideline to sideline type of player, but is pretty good against the run. And then we get to the number 5 here for our top 5. I have Junior Colson from Michigan. Now, Junior Colson, a lot of people have him rated 3, 4. I have him at 5 because when I watched him on tape, he has great stats. He has great production. But he doesn't have the quick twitch fibers that I would like to see in a linebacker at the next level. A guy that, when you read and react, I expect you to burst through the hole, through the gap, make the tackle on the running back. You know what I mean? You see an outlet pass. Boom, explosion, accelerate to that and make the tackle on the outside. I don't see a lot of that explosion from Junior. So it kind of made me question what I've been hearing versus what I'm watching. And I'm like, yeah, he's got great production and everything, but man, it's like he doesn't look like he has a second gear at all.
Yeah.
So it made me question a little bit at the next level. I still think he'll be a good player, but maybe there's a different type of niche he needs to fall into at the next level for a team.
We got Tom Leiter before you get into the rest of your top 5. He says nobody needs a linebacker more than Seattle. It's funny because I was just thinking of Seattle when we're going over this list. You know what I mean? Because I'm saying when you get with a team like that and then some of these linebackers, what they could do with them, I find it pretty interesting, and I think they could have some success here with one of these guys. He says Brooks and Wagner are going to be in a 3-4 defense. Dallas Turner out of Alabama, please, he says, Joe.
Yeah.
He's thinking maybe along the lines where you were thinking of.
Yeah, so at number 4, I have Jeremiah Trotter Jr. from Clemson. Played a lot of middle linebacker, very athletic guy who's fast. And as you get higher in the list, that's kind of becomes the whole thing, right? Everybody's quick, fast, and all that. But Trotter, I feel like needs to also work on his run-stopping game. I think he's a decent player in coverage, not the best, but decent, but still needs to develop the rest of his game. But you got to love the athletic ability that he has and the size that he has to go into the next level. Number 3, and this is where, Tom, you might appreciate. I know a lot of people don't even have Dallas Turner from Alabama
linebackers list
as a linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think that might be his best position at the next level. I think he could be a very good pass rusher still. I'm not saying that he can't be or anything, but something tells me that this guy from Alabama, I watched some tape. Sometimes he played linebacker for Alabama and had tremendous coverage ability. Obviously, his pass rushing skills are through the roof. Definitely needs to, like we said before, needs to work on more pass rush moves. But great coverage as a linebacker, great at shooting in and stopping the run. So I think that his best position is actually linebacker and not necessarily, D end. So nobody's kind of even brought this up that much, hardly at all. But I think that might be his best position. I think where teams might find out, like, even if they use him as a D end in the beginning, maybe, especially if they have a hole at linebacker, maybe you put him at that position, teach him how to be a linebacker at the next level, because he didn't have enough experience at Alabama with it. But I think that might be the next thing for him. I think he could really thrive and become maybe even an all-pro type of linebacker, which Tom is super excited about, of potentially having him as a linebacker. So I think that would be something interesting to see. And who knows, maybe you have yourself a stud at linebacker instead of just a good player at the end. Number 2,
piece of candy.
That's right, this is a piece of candy right here. Number 2, Edgerrin Cooper from Texas A&M. Some people have this guy at 1, some people have him at 2, but pretty much consensus 1 or 2. You could say 1A, 1B at this point with linebackers. Edgerrin Cooper, very fast, is basically a missile of a linebacker that shoots in, destroys your backfield, rushes the passer, stops the run, and not to mention is also really good at coverage. So he has the whole enchilada at linebacker.
Package.
He is the terrorist of linebackers. He does everything extremely well. And he has a little bit longer arms than a lot of these linebackers coming out, which is going to help, keeping space from linemen and what have you, disengaging. And then number 1, I kind of struggled with this between Edgerrin Cooper and Peyton Wilson from North Carolina State. These guys are so closely similar to each other. They both attack the ball extremely well, stop the run, have phenomenal coverage skills, and their top end speed is ridiculous. Like, they literally run like wide receivers. It's absurd. So when you think you have a seam route up the middle and Cooper or Wilson are a little bit shaded lower and you're like, oh, I got him open. And as soon as you throw that ball, these guys turn on the jets and they just pick the ball off. You're like, God, how the hell did that happen? It's almost like a cheat code in Madden. These guys are ridiculous. So phenomenal attributes. Definitely my top 2 linebackers, hands down. It's not even close. But between both of them, how would you say, okay, who's better than who? Here's my thing, is a lot of people are going to point to the thing about Wilson is that he has an injury history, and he does. He's also 23 years old, which I don't know why this is a huge deal, but apparently that's old as a prospect. Edgerrin Cooper's younger, and he has the same abilities, right? Very similar. But Peyton Wilson, I feel like, is going to be the best, is because he's already played enough games and has experience to where you throw him in at the next level. There might be some things that he may have already seen or that he's used to, where Cooper, I think Cooper's going to be electric and great, but I kind of like Wilson just a tad bit more. I mean, Wilson has top end speed just a little bit better than Cooper, not by much. It's only by a sliver, but still, like, I just think when you, I don't think you could go wrong either way. Basically, it's like kind of like how I felt with the top 2 D tackles. whoever you pick, you pick. You're getting a stellar player no matter what. But I think after these two players, if you need linebacker, now you're rolling the dice with everybody else. Maybe Dallas Turner might be the exception if you do view him as a linebacker. But after that, it's rolling the dice, hoping somebody hits. So if you need a linebacker, definitely take one of those two. Maybe Turner, if people see him that way. But nonetheless, that's the top 10 linebackers of this draft.
There you go. And there's all of Joe's top 10 lists for this week. He tackled the offensive line, the defensive line, and the linebackers. Let's take a look one last time at each one of those lists in consecutive order here in your top 10 O-line. Then your defensive lineman.
The D lineman, the O lineman. And the both of those position groups are ridiculously deep. Just like earlier Mike Tackett was mentioning, John even said something along those lines where, and it's so deep. And we talk about O-line, D-line, but also wide receivers are extremely deep. Corners and defensive backs, maybe not safety, but corners are kind of deep. There's some guys that aren't really being talked about that could come out of nowhere. There was a corner at a Mercer University. Had a phenomenal combine. Now, what does that do? That's going to make people say, hey, who's this kid? Let's go take a look at his game film. And maybe you might see his name being creeped up into maybe day 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's getting crazy. Like as more and more information comes out, that's what makes this so hard this year, is trying to figure out what players are going where and how teams possibly view them. That's the crazy part.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. It's creeping up on us fast.
Very fast.
Absolutely. A lot of different storylines could come up right before then, and we've seen it come down right to the night of. You know what I mean?
We have. Yes.
I mean, and if I think we talk about the list that we're going to cover in a little while, a few weeks from now, 3 years ago in 2021, that was the year that, again, it was Baker Mayfield, I want to say, and Sam Darnold and those guys. We didn't know it was going to be Baker Mayfield to the night of. All of a sudden decided. It was all saying, it looked like it was a lock. That it was Sam Darnold, that visited the family and everything else. Yep. And, I mean, it flipped upside down. So
sure did.
You never know. And like you said, you think whatever might be a sure thing isn't exactly a sure thing. And that goes to show you with, Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, Jadeveon Clowney, things like that. Guys are number 1s, number 2s that just kind of made a career in the NFL still, but not if you look at value and where they were picked. They're just, and
that's the thing too, is if anything, what every draft has taught us. And I know we get excited, and of course, because it's optimism, it's like maybe my team got better with this pick, that pick, and whatever. But at the same time, we really don't know how well everything's going to pan out until a few years later. Did they pan out? Are they good enough to even be a starter? Or are they just a backup? So, and what other thing I'll say the draft has taught us is that just because you might get the so-called best player for the position doesn't necessarily always mean that they are that.
Yes.
A lot of times we've seen a lot of busts, in this draft. That's why it's a complete crapshoot when you draft a player. No matter how much information you gather, no matter what kind of, gut check feeling that you might have towards a prospect, there's no guarantee that you got the pick right. And just like you mentioned, the 2021 draft, when we kind of scanned it real quick and we just looked at it real quick and we're like, this is going to be interesting to talk about. Literally half of the first round were busts. Half.
Yes.
And at the time, your team was like, we got our guy.
Yes. Here we go.
This is it. We're good.
Yeah, right? You look at those reactions and then what happens after the fact. And,
just saying. It's fun to debate, obviously. It's fun to talk about how my team got this guy. You ended up with that guy. But it definitely should be a blast to go over for sure.
Tom Leiter says y'all should do a show based on how drafts turned out 3 or 4 years later. We do. We actually do episodes of
Tom.
that.
Yes.
We'll have to maybe do a compilation of a
It'll
bunch of them.
be-
But maybe we'll put it on our YouTube in a certain
Yeah,
area.
we can do that.
And we could put them all in a certain area so you can
Yeah.
find them all.
We
so
could do-
it
we could
is
do
like
that.
kind of combined together so you can look how we graded each one.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely have, Tom.
Yes, we have. We do. And that's how we grade those drafts, you know?
Right. So, like, we'll go over. So, 2021, like we're talking about, we're going to go over it the same night we do the mock draft. That's usually what we do. So that way we'll go over that draft, we'll do our mock, and then we'll gear up for the next night's festivities.
Yes, absolutely. And we do. Like, that's the thing. Everybody wants to instantly grade the draft the night after.
You can't.
And we always have said we're not going to bother because again, what's the point? You know, I mean, we'll say like, yeah, it looks like these people or these teams really did a good job overall so far.
Right.
But we shall see
Right.
in 3 years when you can usually tell where things have panned out. And like
Yeah.
we said, this upcoming one we're gonna do. There could be. There's a lot of ifs.
I'll tell you right
talk
now.
about, you know,
The one thing that I want to touch
candy
on
and
too
nuts.
is
You got
that
the ifs and buts all over that one.
the one thing I'll touch on too is the fact that like this draft up for this one in particular, we haven't seen as much movement already as we have before.
Yes.
Like we're already seeing like the Vikings traded and got the 23rd
Yes.
overall pick
Yeah.
because everybody's expecting it. They're going to make a major push to trade up and get their quarterback if he's where they're thinking he's going to be. You know, then you look at other teams now, you know, trading for players. The Bills move on from Diggs and trade him away. And we still have to wait and see what's going to happen with Cincinnati and T. Higgins because that's still out there. Cincinnati can't afford or doesn't want to afford it anyway to pay Higgins that kind of money, $20 million plus for the year. So look for him to maybe potentially be on the move. Maybe the Bengals will have another first-round pick before it's said and done, but before we get to the draft. So that's going to change everything. The fact that, and you look at the Bills, now they have, like I think 11 or more picks now after that trade. Not necessarily for all this year, obviously, but again, it's more ammo that they could probably potentially package up. Maybe the Bills move up into the top 10-ish area and then get their number one wide receiver that they're looking for. So that's why leading up to this draft has been more hype and more craziness than before, is because, one, like we said, anybody can go any direction, but at the same time, there's so much else that's going on, whether it be trades or talks of trading down. When we get to the draft, I complete it to be a complete fiasco that night in the first round anyway.
Yes.
It's going to be chaotic.
It's going to be exciting. We're excited about it, Joe.
I know.
Absolutely.
Super excited.
All right. So
I can't wait to see what my team cannot do or can do.
Yes. I know. Like, how disappointed will we be again this year? You know, we got a disappointment level. It's like, is it here or there?
Well,
You know, so but
that's the
last
other-
year I think there was a
Yeah.
few bright spots. You know,
There
but we
was.
were fine.
And that's the funny thing as a fan, right?
Yes.
Is where you're so hyped, like, oh, these players are still available. They got to take one of them. I hope they take one of them. And then they take some dude at a Tennessee East University.
Yeah.
You know?
Tulsa Central.
Tom Leiter says Arizona will either take Harrison Jr. or someone like Minnesota will trade the house for that pick. In your
his
opinion, Tom, that's one of the very many scenarios that could happen. I'll say this. I completely expect, I think the deal is already in place for Minnesota to move up, but predicated on if their quarterback is there, whether that be Arizona. Because here's the thing is like Arizona really wants Harrison Jr. They'll settle for they'll be okay with neighbors too. But if they trade out of that top 10 area, I think they might be, they most likely might not get those guys.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Minnesota, definitely expect them to trade up with what team? Good luck trying to figure that out. Could be Arizona, could be the Patriots, could be the Giants, could be anybody.
It's got a Patriot vibe.
Chargers?
That's just kind of what they do. But we'll
Chargers
see.
too.
But
Chargers
Bill
at 5
Belichick's
could
not there
trade
anymore
down.
now, though. So I don't know what the difference might be
Right,
with this whole
exactly.
thing. That's the thing
Different.
with the Patriots.
Patriots,
That's an exciting thing for
and
me
that-
to see.
and that's the thing too is when you look at those scenarios, and I know we're kind of
Yeah.
dragging this on,
Yeah.
but it's exciting to talk about. Is
Yeah.
that the Patriots at 3, as much as they're saying we're open for business, but we still haven't made a decision on what we're doing. Great. I think the only way the Patriots move is if some team makes a very stupid offer. And what I mean by stupid offer is like they're overpaying an exorbitant amount to get that pick. It's the only way I see any of those top 3 teams moving out.
Yes.
So I don't think that's likely to happen. So I think the Patriots stay there and they take their quarterback, whoever that may be.
All right, thank you so much. That's it
Thanks,
for
guys.
tonight. That was a lot of fun. We're going to be back with
Can't
more
wait for next week when I have a
And,
massive headache.
Yeah,
from
I know.
doing this stupid rankings.
God bless you, man. I'm along for the ride, and I'm getting more information
Dude.
from you, man. So it's amazing.
Let me tell you.
And
Ugh, it's not fun.
yeah,
This year's not fun. This year is definitely not fun because it's like murky water. You can't see all the way through. It's hard to decipher.
All right. Well, we'll see you in a few weeks. So that's it for us. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.
Join us next week from 8 till 10 Wednesday nights for more Football on the Know with Jim and Joe.